There's a chocolate candy sold across the Middle East. Kids unwrap it after school. Parents toss it into grocery carts without thinking twice. It's called Rascal Ait, direct translation, head of the slave. A sweet treat, named after human property, sitting on shelves between the gum and the chips, and nobody blinks. That little candy encodes something your education deliberately left out. 700 years before the first European slave ship ever launched, the Arab-Islamic slave trade was already running. It operated for 14 centuries. And the human toll, it dwarfs the 12 million figure from your textbook so completely, that number starts to look like a footnote. They never taught you this. That silence wasn't an accident. Today we crack open the hidden ledger, the religious decrees that made it legal, the castration systems that enforced it, and the machinery of silence still protecting every bit of it right now. Historian Ronald Segal, in his 2001 work Islam's Black Slaves, puts the number at 11.5 to 14 million black Africans enslaved through the Arab trade routes between the 7th and 20th centuries. Historian Ralph Austen goes further, estimating the trans-Saharan route alone moved roughly 9 million, pushing the total across all corridors to somewhere between 10 and 18 million. Now hold that number. The transatlantic slave trade, the one you studied in school, the one with the museums and the memorials and the Hollywood films, that was approximately 12 million people over 400 years. The Arab-Islamic slave trade moved as many or more, over 1,300 years, 13 centuries, and it didn't operate on a single ocean route. This was a network, caravans grinding across the Sahara, dhows sailing the Red Sea, trading vessels crisscrossing the Indian Ocean, 3 massive corridors feeding human beings into an economic machine that ran without interruption from the age of Muhammad to the 20th century. If those numbers still feel abstract, let me give you a single location. Zanzibar, a small island off the coast of East Africa. At its peak in the 19th century, an estimated 50,000 enslaved people passed through Zanzibar every single year. 50,000, that market wasn't shut down until 1873. Pause on that date. That's closer to the invention of the telephone than to anything we'd call ancient history. So, here's the question your education never answered. Did a single lesson, a single textbook chapter, ever address a slave trade that lasted over a millennium and consumed up to 18 million lives? Or was the entire curriculum focused exclusively on the Atlantic? Think about when you first realized the history we're taught is heavily filtered, because that realization matters. You now have the scale, but scale alone doesn't explain longevity. A machine that grinds human beings for 13 centuries without ever being shut down, without a single conviction. That requires something no warlord or merchant can provide on their own. It requires divine authority. And they got it. The Quran explicitly permits sexual access to what your right hand possesses. That phrase became the legal backbone of an entire economy. Captives weren't metaphorically owned. They were doctrinally defined as legitimate property, written into scripture, settled theology. And this wasn't abstract. The Prophet's most well-known concubine was Maria the Copt, a Christian woman gifted to him by the governor of Egypt. Classical Sunni scholars overwhelmingly classify her as a surah, property, not a wife. Think about what that means at a systems level. When the highest authority in a faith personally practices something, it doesn't just become permissible. It becomes aspirational. It becomes culture. And unlike the transatlantic trade, where Christian abolitionists eventually rose up from within and fought to tear it down, here there was no internal pushback. None. How do you argue against a practice that traces directly to the Prophet himself? You don't. For 14 centuries, nobody did. Doctrinally sealed, legally bulletproof, self-perpetuating. But here's what the architects of that machine never accounted for. Human beings have a breaking point. In 869 AD, in the salt marshes of southern Iraq, tens of thousands of East African slaves, the Zanj, had been dragged there to do the work no one else would touch. Stripping salt crust from the earth in scorching heat. No future. No names. Just bodies feeding an empire's agriculture. But they revolted. Under a Persian leader, they didn't just riot, they organized. They sacked Basra in 871, one of the wealthiest cities in the Islamic world. They built their own state, Al-Mara, and they governed it for over a decade. Hundreds of thousands died before the Abbasid Caliphate finally crushed them in 883. 14 years. An empire of the enslaved, carved from a swamp with bare hands and fury. But here's the question that should sit with you tonight. If tens of millions of African people were shipped into the Middle East over 14 centuries, if they were numerous enough to sack cities and build states, then where are their descendants? Right now, where are the millions of black families across the Arabian Peninsula? The people were there. They just weren't allowed to reproduce. Here's how they did it. The mechanics operated on 2 levels, and both had to work in tandem for the crime to be perfect. Level 1, physical elimination, not through mass graves, but through castration, industrial scale castration. Centers across North Africa, places like Ajut in Egypt, processed young boys, some as young as 8, before marching them across the desert to slave markets. Records documented by Ronald Segal show 80 to 90% of those boys died. From the procedure, from infection, from the desert itself. For every 10 children who entered that pipeline, 8 or 9 never came out alive. The survivors? Eunuchs? Biologically prevented from fathering children, building families, creating any community that could persist across generations. That's why there is no massive African diaspora in the Arab world. The evidence wasn't hidden. It was destroyed at the source. Level 2. Ideological cover. You can't run an extermination system for 14 centuries without a story that makes it acceptable. So, the intellectual class built one. Ibn Khaldun, often called the father of sociology, wrote in his Muqaddimah that black Africans have little that is essentially human and have attributes quite similar to those of dumb animals. Al-Jahiz, another giant of Arab scholarship, called them the worst of men. These weren't fringe voices. These were the authorities whose work shaped how entire civilizations thought about race. When your greatest scholars tell you the people you're castrating aren't fully human, the moral machinery runs itself. And if you're placing all of this safely in the medieval past, here's a date, 1979. That year, the last official eunuch guardian, an agawat, was appointed at the Prophet's Mosque in Medina. Your parents were alive. Disco was on the radio. A castrated man was being formally installed at Islam's second holiest site. Millions entered. Almost no trace remained. Bloodlines severed. Intellectual cover locked in. But here's what should unsettle you most. A system this thorough, this protected by religious authority, never faced a single tribunal. Never required an apology. It didn't disappear. It evolved. And what it evolved into is still running, right now, in broad daylight, under a different name. Saudi Arabia, 1962. That's the year they got around to legally abolishing slavery. Not 1862. 1962, the same year John Glenn orbited the Earth. Mauritania, 1981, the last country on the planet to abolish, and they didn't bother criminalizing it until 2007. The iPhone launched the same year. Let those dates destroy every comfortable version of, that was a long time ago. The 2023 Global Slavery Index puts Mauritania's prevalence at 32 per 1,000 people, one of the highest rates on Earth. Hereditary cattle slavery, families born into bondage, generation after generation, running on the same racial hierarchy that was cemented centuries ago. But the real evolution wasn't in the desert margins, it was in the boardrooms. The kafala sponsorship system took the entire architecture of human ownership and gave it a corporate makeover. Slave became guest worker. Owner became sponsor. And that sponsor holds your passport, controls your wages, and decides whether you can leave the job or leave the country. Walk away, and you're classified as an illegal alien. Strip away the vocabulary, and you're staring at the identical mechanism. Total dependency enforced by legal structure, with the worker holding zero bargaining power. Same cage, new paint. Qatar built its gleaming 2022 World Cup stadiums on this system. The Guardian's investigation tracked close to 7,000 migrant worker deaths, largely from South Asia and East Africa. 7,000 human beings for a football tournament. The world watched the opening ceremony anyway. Think that's the flaw? In 2017, CNN broadcast footage of an open-air slave auction outside Tripoli, Libya. West African migrants, human beings, sold for $400 a person. $400, 21st century, on camera. The global response lasted a few news cycles, then silence. So here's what should truly unsettle you. 14 centuries, tens of millions of lives, modern atrocities filmed and aired on international television, and your school never mentioned a word of it. University departments built entirely around justice and equity, silent. The same media institutions that curate your moral outrage every single day look the other way on this one. Why? That question reaches far beyond history, because the people who decide which truths you're allowed to learn are the same people writing the economic rules you live under. And if they can bury something this massive to protect a preferred narrative, you need to start asking what else they've decided you don't get to know. Because the answer is devastatingly simple. Historian Bernard Lewis, one of the most respected scholars of the Middle East, called this entire history obscure and sensitive. He observed that merely raising it in elite academic circles signals what he called hostile intentions. Let that land. Investigating a slave trade that consumed 10 to 18 million human beings is treated as an act of aggression in the very institutions that claim to champion truth. Here's the mechanism. Western academia and media have built their entire moral framework on one clean equation. Colonialism equals white, guilt equals European, and oppression flows in exactly one direction. That's the approved script. 14 centuries of Arab-Islamic slave trafficking detonates it. It introduces complexity where they need simplicity. It implicates non-Western civilizations in systematic, industrialized human exploitation on a massive scale. And complexity is the death of a narrative monopoly. So they don't debate it, they erase it. There is no museum for the Zanj, the East African slaves who revolted in 9th century Iraq. No apology for the Mahameshin, the despised caste in Yemen descended from enslaved Africans. The Arabic word abid, literally slaves, is still hurled as a racial slur across the Middle East today. No major Islamic institution has ever declared those religious rulings were wrong. And Western media helps keep every single bit of it off your screen. Now here's where this lands in your life. If these institutions can coordinate to bury 14 centuries of castration, death, and bloodline erasure just to protect a political script, they are absolutely capable of lying to you about who rigs the housing market, why your cost of living keeps climbing, and which hands actually pull the levers of power in this country. The playbook is identical. Control the narrative, control the people. The only way you beat a rigged game is by refusing to stay blindfolded. Share this video with someone who still thinks the system is playing straight. And subscribe, because I am not done dragging these buried truths into daylight.